I'm sure you've had a lot of questions in your mind about intermittent fasting. It's a new dietary trend. Everybody's doing it, but you want to know whether it's for you, whether you're doing it correctly. You've been doing it for so long that you don't seem to get any results. Well, at the end of this video, you should have the answers to your questions. One of the things you should understand about intermittent fasting is, in its most simplest definition, is restricting yourself to eating at a particular time. For some people, they just give themselves 4 hours a day to eat. Some people 6, some people 10, some people 12 hours. And that's when they do all their eating. Outside that particular time, they do not eat at all. When you eat, this is what happens. There's a major hormone in your body called insulin. And its job is to basically push the glucose that has been broken down from all the food you eat into your cells. Because if they stay around in your bloodstream, it might cause a problem. When you do not eat, these insulin levels drop. Following the insulin is another hormone called leptin. Now, what is leptin? Have you noticed that when you eat, you feel too full? You can't eat anything else, but you can drink a bottle of water. The hormone that is responsible for sending a message to your brain that your stomach is full. Once it drops, you start to feel hungry and tired. Now, this is why the first group of people fail at intermittent fasting, but I'm going to explain later in the video. Another interesting thing about leptin is that exposure to too high levels of leptin, remember that when you eat, your leptin levels increase. When you fast, they drop. When you eat, your insulin levels increase. When you fast, it drops. Exposure to high levels of leptin can make you insensitive to it. In other words, remember I said you're supposed to feel full. Some people don't feel full, and so they continue eating, and then obesity happens. Another thing with insulin is exposure to too high levels of insulin over a period of time can make your cells insensitive to that insulin. If you continue that way, you develop what is called insulin resistance that is linked to many diseases: hypertension, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, etc. Now, some of you are wondering, what exactly am I doing that is making my insulin and my leptin levels go that up or making me resistant to it? Your food. You need to understand that not all foods are created equal. For example, 3,000 calories from foods like donuts, meat pie, bread are not the same thing as 3,000 calories from brown rice, from fava rice, from whole grain, from beans, and the rest. Now, processed food versus unprocessed foods. What is the difference? Processed foods can make your insulin levels go up higher than normal because they release glucose fast into your bloodstream. Natural foods or whole grain foods take a long while to break down because they contain what is called good starch. So there is good starch and there is bad starch. The good starch is known as amylose, single chain, and the enzymes can only attack them from one end each. Amylopectin is what we call bad starch. In bad starch, there are so many branches that these enzymes can attack it from different angles, and so they digest faster. That is why you notice that when you take processed food, you feel hungry faster than when you take natural foods or whole grain foods. Another common example is you can finish 2 liters of processed orange juice, but how many oranges can you eat? Now that you know what happens when you eat, when you don't eat, what's responsible for spiking your insulin and leptin levels, and how you can bring them down effectively, that brings us to your questions about intermittent fasting. Number 1, is it for you? Well, intermittent fasting is safe for most people, but is not for everybody. There are certain people that will not benefit from intermittent fasting. People who are pregnant, people who have hypoglycemia, people who have diabetes mellitus. It is best to stay away from intermittent fasting or talk to your doctor or dietitian before you start. Now, for the rest of us who have been given a go-ahead or can go ahead with intermittent fasting, what are some of the mistakes that we make? Number 1 is during our breaks when we can eat, some of us fill up that gap with processed meals, bread, pasta, anything that has flour. Remember I said amylopectin is the bad starch. When it breaks down early, it spikes up your insulin levels again, and we're back to square one. The second mistake that people make during intermittent fasting is that they fast for too long, too early. Yes, I know you're motivated, it's your New Year resolution, but then again, you need to pace yourself. For example, you can't just start 16 to 8 hours if you've not been used to it. You can start 12 hours non-eating, 12 hours eating, but make sure you're eating natural whole grain meals. You can move that up after a few weeks to 14 hours to 10, 16 hours to 8. Some people even do 18 hours to 6. So please go at your pace. After a while, your insulin and leptin levels will balance and you'll get used to not eating for longer periods of time. Even after a while, it becomes a habit or it becomes a lifestyle. For me, sometimes I don't get hungry till it's 3 p.m. Another common mistake that people make during intermittent fasting is that they don't drink enough water. That can make you feel lightheaded or sluggish. So please keep your hydration up so that during that fasting period, your kidneys can actually work better to clear out the waste from your body. Another question that you might have is, does intermittent fasting really help with weight loss? Now, alone, intermittent fasting can help, but if you are in a calorie deficit. Another thing that happens when you eat more than your body needs is that that particular glucose that your body does not need is converted to adipose tissue, which is stored in certain fat cells. Now, if you take less than your body needs, your body breaks down those fat tissues and uses them for energy. So remember to stay in a calorie deficit. For some of you, you can combine it with exercise that helps your body burn more energy. For me, I do intermittent fasting and exercise and calorie deficits at the same time. So remember, pace yourself. Don't go and copy other people because other people are doing what you feel like is cool. No two metabolisms are the same. You need to understand your own body. If there are questions you have that I've not answered, put them in the comment section, subscribe, like, turn on my notifications because we are going to have a lot of these conversations. Now, let me know what next I should talk about.